Okay, I admit it. This show defeated me. Never have I struggled this much to review something. It's not even that I hate the show. It's that I'm so bored with it that I just can't even. But then I think about that final episode, and that fight scene, the zombies, and that heifer magically getting the forest and just...
Flames on the side of my face, breathing, heaving breaths.
Where to begin? Okay, so Enoch tells Thrawn that they know where the Jedi are, and Thrawn sends out some squads to take them out. Morgan decides to do the whole they have no chance thing, to which Thrawn correctly says, yeah, that's not how that works. He's seen things turn in the other side's favor during the rebellion, so he's not dropping his guard, which would make it very unfortunate if this super genius does exactly that towards the end of the episode. Meanwhile, the Great Mothers decide to give Morgan a power-up and turn her into their new weapon, complete with a magic sword of her own. Now, you'd be forgiven if you thought you were watching Willow instead of Star Wars, because nothing about this feels like it belongs in Star Wars. Then again, we've kind of given up the pretense of this being an actual Star Wars show. This is anti-Star Wars, where you can do anything except have a speedy plot. Speaking of the plot, we get this scene with Ezra building a new lightsaber and bickering with Huyang over how to construct it. We'll just set that aside because their banter isn't really important. The important part is the end of the scene. While Ezra builds his lightsaber, Sabine walks in and mentions that Ezra's master was Kanan Jarrus. Huyang finds the part that Ezra was looking for, and he makes a comment about the importance of a bond between a master and a Padawan. Ezra lights up the saber, and then asks Sabine if Ahsoka ever taught her how to build a lightsaber, but Sabine's already left. Ezra asks Huyang what happened between Sabine and Ahsoka, and Huyang says this.
Ahsoka became afraid that Sabine was training as a Jedi for the wrong reasons after what happened on Mandalore. At the time, Ahsoka felt that if Sabine unlocked her potential, she would become dangerous.
Sabine's ability to use the Force. I know in the lore that people can cut themselves off from the Force, and they can influence people and even control them through the Force. Blocking someone's access, though, that's new to me. Maybe it's in some expanded universe books I've never read. However, I could see how that's possible if someone was powerful enough. But in context to this show, it really does sound like Ahsoka literally cut Sabine off from the Force. Let's hear it again.
Ahsoka became afraid that Sabine was training as a Jedi for the wrong reasons after what happened on Mandalore. At the time, Ahsoka felt that if Sabine unlocked her potential, she would become dangerous.
Yeah, that really sounds like she blocked her from using the Force. And the rest of the episode shores this up because the impossible happens. I'm sure by now everyone knows, but by the end of the episode, Sabine can use the Force, and she's suddenly able to do this right after this scene with Ahsoka, where Ahsoka tells her it's time to become an apprentice again. Up to this point, every time Sabine tried to use the Force, it didn't work. After this, it not only works and works well, but Ahsoka encourages Sabine to use it, which she didn't do before. So, yeah, it seems like Ahsoka cut her own Padawan off from the Force to stop her from possibly turning to the dark side. I mean, I guess that's better than trying to murk your nephew in his sleep because you had a bad dream, but it's still not good. And by the way, Sabine doesn't notice how she's suddenly able to use the Force when she couldn't do it for years. Anywho, Thrawn's forces attack and damage the ship. Ahsoka and Ezra jump down to use the Force to hold up the ship because the tiny aliens are traveling with them under it. Sabine manages to take out the fighters, but the ship is too damaged to fly. Word gets back to Thrawn, who tells everyone to prepare for a ground assault. Now remember, there's just 3 Jedi, and while that's technically more than enough to thoroughly ruin your day, Thrawn does have experience with the Jedi, and he just told Morgan not to underestimate them, so you'd think his response to the potential ground assault would be more robust. Nah, he just does the typical villain move of shooting at them. Of course, the Jedi get through because the plot armor is strong with these 3. But the part that stood out the most was that when they have to open the doors, Ahsoka and Ezra use the Force, and then Ahsoka randomly tells Sabine to help too, even though up to this point, Sabine hasn't been able to use the Force. And we do hear a Force thrum when she does it.
Sabine, help out!
This is further proof of my theory that Ahsoka blocked Sabine's access to the Force, because there's no reason it should suddenly work in this scene after, what was it, a decade of Sabine trying and failing to use it. They get through the doors, obviously, which annoys Thrawn even though he already said that the Jedi were unpredictable, resourceful, and not to be underestimated. It's almost like the super genius who always has a plan for everything should have planned for that. So now the show's making him look stupid just to move along the plot. But it doesn't matter because he sends the stormtroopers to handle the Jedi. This time, though, he does plan ahead. He has the Great Mothers at the ready, and when the trio makes short work of the troopers, the Great Mothers resurrect the troopers as zombies. Then we get to watch one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in Star Wars. We get to watch people with laser swords get swarmed by zombies because none of them, not one, decides to do the thing everybody does with a lightsaber. Cut off limbs. They're over here batting away blaster bolts and slashing troopers' chests. Dude, take your laser sword and cut their fucking heads off. Any other time you can't wait to take a limb, now all three of them are like, I don't know what to do. How does this even work? Not one decapitation. Not one. Anyway, Thrawn uses this to get the ship ready to leave, but now he needs an additional distraction, so he has Morgan stay behind. The Great Mothers leave and are like, well, it was nice knowing you. Thrawn says, for the Empire, but Morgan says, for Dathomir, which is supposed to be a reference to the destruction of Dathomir by the Empire and the Great Mother's intent to bring it back, which is basically never mentioned in the show. It's just one of those things you're supposed to know, because why bother to set things up? That might actually add in stakes and make the show enjoyable, and we wouldn't want to do that. Speaking of things we wouldn't want to do, we get one of the worst lightsaber fights ever. So Ezra and Sabine chase after Thrawn while Ahsoka fights Morgan. This thing looks like it was shot in slow-mo. It's so damn slow you can see every mistake, like this part where Morgan swings at nothing. Ahsoka doesn't even have to move back, there's 3 feet of air between them. It's painfully clear they're not actually trying to hit each other. If you speed it up, it looks much better, but at their actual pace, it looks like they're just running through the choreography. It's weird that no one cut out some of the frames during the editing to touch up the pacing, or maybe they did, and this is what they ended up with. Either way, it's bantha poodoo. It's bad. It's not as bad as The Last Jedi, but it is getting there. I mean, what is happening here? I'll play it again slowly. Again, what is happening here? Morgan spins under Ahsoka's saber for no reason. If she wanted to block the attack, she could have parried Ahsoka's saber to the right, which would have also blocked Ahsoka from using her other saber. Instead, Morgan spins under Ahsoka's saber, exposing her back to Ahsoka. Now, does Ahsoka, a master swordswoman, take the easy shot and just stab this woman in the back? I mean, she wouldn't even have to try. She'd barely have to move. If she just lifted her left arm and pointed, that'd be enough. She wouldn't even have to go all the way through. Just touching Morgan would kill her. Morgan is a throwaway kind of white-looking villain. She has no plot armor. If you pop the lightsaber too close to her face, she'd die from shock. But no, Ahsoka doesn't take the easy hit even when Morgan pauses and stands there for 5 seconds. No, instead, Morgan pushes Ahsoka's binded saber towards her back, forcing Ahsoka to block, but the sound design makes it sound like Morgan was trying to strike Ahsoka instead of just pushing the woman's lightsaber into her own body. And again, they pause. And it's only after this that Ahsoka remembers she has got a saber in the other hand, and tries for a strike, which Morgan easily blocks because Ahsoka pulls her binded arm away to take the swing, instead of just pushing Morgan's sword down to the ground with her right saber so she could stab Morgan in the chest with the other. And the whole fight is like this, where they could have killed each other half a dozen times if either of them bothered to actually try to do it. But on the plus side, no one's weapon magically disappears. Meanwhile, Ezra and Sabine bump into some super stormtroopers who appear to be cyborgs or droids and just get the bejesus beat out of them. Ezra stabs one of them, but that does nothing. Sabine shoots the other, but the bolts bounce off. She tries to use her lightsaber, but the trooper knocks it away and pins her to the column. And then, out of nowhere, Sabine suddenly uses the Force to pull the saber to her hand and kill the trooper. I thought when this happened in The Force Awakens it was stupid, because how could Mary Sue, a total noob, overpower Emo Ren, who's been using the Force his whole life? But no, this is dumber. 10 years Sabine tried to use the Force. Bupkis. But now, after Ahsoka telling her she's finally ready to be an apprentice, now Sabine can use the Force, and how, because after this, she's just got it mastered. I get that this is supposed to be a big moment, but it just comes across as unbelievable and silly because she's suddenly able to do this. If we'd seen hints of her getting better over the last 7 episodes, this could have worked, but to have her doing this out of nowhere feels like a cheat. Now she's able to force throw Ezra onto the Star Destroyer. Ezra uses the Force to make the initial jump, but Sabine uses the Force to boost him despite this being her second time using the Force. So now Ezra's on the Star Destroyer, and he's supposed to pull Sabine over, but Ahsoka gets attacked by troopers during her fight with Morgan and makes it to the top of the tower. Sabine sees Morgan and Ahsoka continue to try not to kill each other and has to choose whether to join Ezra or help Ahsoka. Morgan sees the Star Destroyer leaving and starts monologuing, so you know she's about to die. And then she sees that Sabine came back to help Ahsoka, which really pisses her off. She and Ahsoka fight again, and this time they look like they're going for actual kill shots. It's still ridiculously slow though. Sabine's stuff is even worse because it looks like either the actress or the stuntman or both are completely out of sync and miss their beats. At any rate, Ahsoka finally kills Morgan. I know no one cares, but it did happen. She and Sabine get swarmed by troopers, but Hu Yang comes in for the save with the ship, and they take off after Thrawn, who humble brags before he blasts off to the main galaxy. Sabine and Ahsoka are now stranded on Peridea, so they go back to the tiny aliens. Shen decides to shack up with the discount Ronin. Balin stumbles onto the Sith Argonaut, and I assume the guy on the right is supposed to be Darth Bane. I don't know, because the show never explains anything. Thrawn arrives at Dathomir. Do we know why? From the context of the show? No, he's just there. From the lore, the Great Mothers are probably going to resurrect the dead Dathomiri, who are in the boxes Thrawn loaded into the Star Destroyer. Would it have helped to tell the audience that was the plan? Sure, but this isn't that kind of show. No, this is the kind of show that has the New Republic allow an Imperial ship to land in one of its ship's landing bays without ever bothering to find out who's piloting the thing. Also that they can have a stormtrooper walk out of the ship, everyone tense up, but then have the droid realize who it is and have the dude take off the helmet to reveal he's Ezra. It feels like there's a scene missing, like we should have seen Ezra leaving the Star Destroyer, or someone asking him for codes, or something leading to this moment. Maybe they shot that and cut it, but it's not like they were strapped for time. The episode's barely 40 minutes long, they could have added it in. This entire scene is a perfect representation of everything wrong with this show. Back on Peridea, Sabine and Ahsoka make amends, and then Sabine senses something but can't see anything, but Ahsoka can. Anakin Skywalker, smiling on, glad that this show is finally over. So, to recap, all that's really happened in the entire season is that they found Ezra, Sabine can use the Force, and Thrawn is back in the galaxy. It took them 8 episodes to do this, and we still have no idea what Thrawn's plan is, what Balin is looking for, what is happening with the Imperial Remnant, or how corrupt the New Republic is. You know, all the things you need to know for there to be any stakes in the show. This easily could have been resolved in 2 or 3 episodes. Someone emailed me and made this point. The Ahsoka show and the original trilogy have the same runtime, about 6 hours. Look at how much happened in those 3 movies compared to 8 episodes of Ahsoka. If the first Star Wars movie were paced like this show, Luke's aunt and uncle would have just died, and it would have ended with Luke and Obi-Wan meeting Han and Chewie and leaving on the Falcon. Just nothing happening but a touch of backstory. What a mess. The ratings for the show appear to be lower than the 3rd season of The Mandalorian, which wasn't that good. Rumor has it that there is a 2nd season in the works. As of the making of this video, that hasn't been confirmed. I mean, I guess they could do another season, but with pacing like this, Ray Stevenson's death, and the low viewership, I don't know if it's justified. This is one of those shows where it should have been easy to make it work, but it went off on such a different tangent and started at such a glacial pace that I think it lost all of its fans right from the start and never recovered. It is fixable, but will anyone stick around to watch it? I mean, nobody's talking about this show anymore. This review is super late, but even a week after the season ended, people were done with it. This is yet another failure for the Disney Star Wars brand. At this point, you've got 1 film, Rogue One, and 2 shows, The Mandalorian and Andor, that people praise, and everything else Disney's done with Star Wars has either been very bland or terrible. And remember, Disney has only had Star Wars for 9 years, and they've worn it out. Maybe it's time to take a break. Don't make any Star Wars stuff for at least 5 years. Let it breathe. Get in some better people to work on the films and shows. Work out them scripts, hone them over that 5-year period, then come back. Because this right here, this ain't working. This is just a mess. I think at this point Disney has shown why it's not a good idea to pump out shows and films just because a franchise is popular. That's bound to result in audience burnout and mediocre stories. Don't take my word for it, just watch Ahsoka, if you can stay awake. But what do I know? I'm just some guy.